Good morning, everybody. Today is 4th of June, and we have a monthly international seminar. This is 521st Oceans Weekly Seminar and 152 52nd International Seminar. We will study the paper titled "Can we quantify the aquatic environmental plastic load from aquaculture?" Today, Alicia will present. Alicia, the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay, so I will go straight to the paper. Here's the paper that we will discuss today. In their abstract, the authors developed the first framework for estimating plastic litter from aquaculture by combining data from satellite remote sensing, drones, questionnaires, and in situ measurements. Essentially, the authors acquired multi-dimensional and multi-scale data to help understand the aquaculture farming patterns and its spatial and temporal evolution. Thus, they could estimate the plastic load it generates and suggest effective management approaches. This framework is supposedly able to extend to other regions and other aquaculture patterns. And it is also applicable to local, regional, and global aquaculture plastic litter assessments. So why I chose this paper is because while I was researching about gear loss and plastic contributions from the fisheries sector to the sea, I realized that there weren't many figures from the aquaculture sector, which I found kind of strange since the rate of aquaculture has been increasing. As shown in this graph here, which I took from the FAO 2022, the State of World Fisheries and Aquaculture Report, the contribution of aquaculture of total fisheries and aquaculture production has climbed steadily over the years, reaching 49.2% in 2020, which is on par with the capture fisheries. So one of the reasons for this increase in aquaculture is because while there is a large demand for marine protein, the fish population in the world's seas has been constantly decreasing. So to ensure the global production and supply, farm fisheries is the current solution to this scarcity. Here are some excerpts from the paper's introduction, quantitative statistics on ocean-based plastic waste such as fisheries and aquaculture are still lacking despite the marine aquaculture heavily depending on the use of plastics such as in the use of foam floats, buoys, ropes, and nets. Previous studies by the same authors have also confirmed the presence of high levels of microplastic contamination in the aquatic environments and organisms in the Maui Sea and its adjacent waters. So this study is actually a continuation of that microplastic contamination study in the aquatic environments and organisms. Sorry. Specifically, this study was conducted to assess the environmental load of, of plastics from aquaculture in the Maui Sea. Here, the authors proposed a novel approach to evaluate the plastic waste load from aquaculture by integrating data from satellite remote sensing, unoccupied aerial vehicles, in situ measurements, and questionnaire surveys. Now we move to the material and methods. Maui Sea is located in the northern part of the Beibu Gulf of the South China Sea, and it is a semi-enclosed bay with a total of approximately 135 kilometers. It is fed by the Qing, Dalan, and Maoling rivers and is connected by the Beibu Gulf through a narrow outlet. Its shoreline is surrounded by large areas of natural mangroves or wetlands and is rich in fishery resources. The Maui Sea has been used for mariculture for more than 50 years and has been a typical oyster farming bay of China. So to understand the environmental load of plastics from oyster farming in the Maui Sea, the researchers interviewed oyster farmers with questionnaires and conducted field surveys with assistance of UAVs. The main focus of the study was how plastic is used therein, how plastic might leak into the environment, and thus the potential environmental plastic load from oyster farming. Using the local ecological knowledge interview technique, researchers obtained data from farmers currently engaged in oyster culture from different households from 13 different villages around the Maui Sea area. So for their in situ field measurements, researchers drew a schematic diagram of a grid cell of an oyster farming floating raft based on its structural composition, which is locally known as longko, as shown on the left. And identify the plastic items used for floating raft culture as described in figure 2B, which is on the right. So they randomly selected 10 different rafts and measured and calculated the total weight of each plastic component and the weight per unit area to validate the questionnaire data. How they did it was, first, the length and width of each individual raft was measured and measured manually to calculate the area, and different plastic ropes were sampled and measured to obtain their individual length. And then next, samples from different materials from farmers were obtained and weighted. This included individual foam blocks, plastic bags wrapped around the foam blocks, and different plastic ropes per unit length. Then they obtained UAV images of the entire raft to count the number of all plastic components and to calculate the length of different ropes of a raft. And then finally, they calculated the mass of plastic used for individual floating rafts and the mass of plastic units per area. So without considering sudden damage to the rafts or the need for additional repairs, when the service life of the floating raft is over, different respondents dispose of them in different ways, some of which choose to discard them directly into the marine environment. So to calculate the potential plastic input per unit area per year, they use these two formulas shown here. And then next is the satellite remote sensing analysis, which is shown in the technical flow shown on the left. Researchers extracted remote sensing information of oyster culture, floating rafts in the Maui Sea based on 4 different sources. First is the WorldView 2 satellite, which is data source to obtain remote sensing information on oyster cultures floating rafts in 2011, which provided 0.5 m panchromatic images and 1.8 resolution multispectral images. Next is the GF2 satellite, where researchers acquired remote sensing information of 2018 on floating rafts, which provide 1 meter panchromatic images and 4 meter resolution spectral images. Features submeter spatial resolution, high positional accuracy, and fast altitude maneuvering capability. Since there was a difference in resolution of remote sensing data between these two, 2011 and 2018, they resampled the satellite images of 2011 with NV 5.3 resize tool to obtain the 1M satellite image with the same resolution as 2018. And then the third is UAV image data, which they use for verification of floating rafts with uncertain classification results from the satellite data. And finally, the fourth is ArcGIS 10.2, which is used for statistical analysis to map the distribution of floating rafts in the Maui Sea in both 2011 and 2018. So to calculate the potential plastic load, the authors used the area of floating rafts extracted from remote sensing data and estimated the total weight of the different plastic components, the weight that could be discarded into the environment, and the average annual discarded amount for all floating rafts across the whole sea area using the formula listed here. And then for their data analysis, they use SPSS 25, Man-Whitney-U-Test, Spearman's correlation method, and curve estimation. So moving on to the results. The results of the oyster farming situation is as shown here. 74 valid questionnaires were obtained from 13 villages, and the respondents' age ranged from 26 to 61 years old. All of them have been engaged in oyster farming from 2 to 36 years. All respondents farm in the Maui Sea, with 97% of them adopting floating raft culture and the remaining 3% using stake method. Since the stake method did not use plastic products, researchers only investigated the plastic products used in the floating raft method. These are the results for the amount of different plastic components in floating raft culture. Data showed a diversity in the size of floating rafts, ranging from 175.5 to 2,250 meters squared, as shown in the figure here on the left. The types of plastic components tested and their range of number or lengths and mass equivalent are listed in this table here. As the floating foam blocks come together with the PE wrapping films, the number is the same, but the floating foam blocks weigh much heavier than the wrapping films. So strengthening ropes were in the range of 40 to 1,000 meters and weighted about 8 to 193 kilograms, and the suspension ropes were usually in the range of 2,200 meters to 27,000 meters and weighted between 10 to 123 kilograms. The average amount of material per unit floating raft area is shown in Table 1, and the results of the man-with-TU test showed the distribution of the questionnaire data was consistent with the field measurements. We will come back to this table later. So the amount of PE bundling ropes used for lashing the skeleton was mainly calculated based on in-situ measurements, because respondents were uncertain about the length and mass of the bundling ropes they used. The measured data showed that the average length of individual tie knots were 3.62 to 6.28 meters. The number of knots for individual rafts were 2,640 to 6,486 pieces. The total length of bundling ropes for individual rafts were between 14 kilometers to 29 kilometers. And then the mass of bundling ropes for individual rafts were between 67 to 134 kilograms. And then finally, the average amount of bundling ropes used per unit area was 0.085 kilograms per square meter. So the results of the questionnaire and the field measurements showed that the amount of plastic components used increased as the floating raft area increased. And then here are the results of lifespan of floating rafts and oyster harvesting cycle. The service time of the floating rafts, including all components, was between 2 to 7 years. When the usage threshold is reached, approximately half of the respondents will choose to dispose the rafts directly into the marine environment with the plastic components on them. The lifespan of suspension rope is independent of the floating raft and is correlated with the maturation and sale of oysters. So when farm oysters are sold, the suspension ropes are all released into the environment. Results also showed that different farmers harvested different rounds of oysters over the life cycle of their raft, and therefore, based on the mode 2, suspension ropes will be discarded twice during the lifetime of a floating raft. The results of the spatial and temporal variation in floating rafts and their plastic loads showed that the area of floating raft increased from 369 hectares in 2011 to 916 hectares in 2018, which is a 172% increase. That puts the average increase at 83 hectares annually. Based on the area of floating raft aquaculture in the Maui Sea in 2018, the amount of plastic components used across the sea area was 6,000 170 tons. When the routes ended at and reached the end of service, when the routes reach end of their service lives, 3,840 tons of plastic will be discarded into the marine environment. And then if the lifespan of the raft is 4 years, the average amount of plastic released into the sea is 961 tons per year, with an average inflow of approximately 0.105 kilogram per square meter per year. So based on the investigation of farmers and their floating raft cultures, researchers proposed the following recommendations for reducing the environmental plastic load from aquaculture. First, strengthening governance in terms of policy strengthening and dissemination. Second, plastic removal. Third, replacement of fishing gear. And fourth, transformation of farmers' behavior in terms of ecological education and awareness raising. Here are the results for the generalization of framework for assessing the plastic load. The framework of this study, as shown here on the right, is to quantify the environmental plastic load of oyster floating raft culture and its feasibility to extend to other aquaculture patterns. The framework mainly includes 5 key aspects. The first is acquisition of aquaculture information at different spatial and temporal scales through satellite remote sensing. By doing this, we can understand the distribution, area size, and historical changes, among other factors. Second is UAV remote sensing, which is to quickly and precisely acquire high-resolution aquaculture images of different areas to assist manual measurements and improve the efficiency of field surveys. The third is questionnaire surveys of aquaculture farmers, which is to understand the ecological knowledge related to aquaculture and ecological awareness of farmers to provide data support for subsequent assessment and management of plastic loads. The fourth is field surveys and measurements, which is to deconstruct aquaculture patterns, identify and measure plastic components used, understand their usage patterns, and calculate their usage per unit area. And then finally is data integration, which is to calculate the potential plastic load from aquaculture for the whole target area. And then here are some extracted information from the discussion. Aquaculture production has more than tripled between 1997 to 2017, which is more than 34 metric tons to 112 metric tons, and is expected to continue to expand in the future to meet growing food demands. In this study, 6,170 tons of plastic items were used for floating rafts throughout the Malware Sea in 2018, with approximately 3,840 tons of plastic waste being released into the environment in the following 4 years. Excluding changes in the floating raft area and the management practices, the oyster farming industry in the Malware Sea discharges approximately 961 tons of plastic litter per year. If the increase in the total area of floating raft follows the 2011 to 2018 trend, then the flow of plastic litter will be even higher in the future. So here are the 3 important implications for future research. First, it provides a paradigmatic framework for the assessment of plastics from aquaculture. When ocean source plastic waste from fisheries and aquaculture is well known, there is little figures available on the contribution of aquaculture to the marine plastic load, let alone globally assessed data, making it possible to underestimate the amount of ocean source plastics and underestimate the threat that they pose. Compared to traditional studies based on environmental monitoring data to identify the source of pollution, this study evaluates plastic pollution from the source, which is more conducive to plastic waste management in terms of technology and cost. During questionnaire surveys, researchers can also provide scientific education to improve farmers' knowledge about plastic waste and ecological aquaculture. And then finally, the authors put a disclaimer that this study is only focused on one aquaculture mode, and the method used will not be applicable if it's not possible to determine the area of a certain culture pattern from the water surface. And then finally, this is the additional reading that I managed to find. This is assessment of plastic waste generated from the aquaculture industry in terms of pearl farming. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you so much again. And we will have discuss time. This is for questions and discussion and opinions. If you have any questions and opinions, please tell us freely.
I think this is a very interesting paper, and I feel the way people in this region to farm oysters, I mean the industry is pretty similar to Taiwan, like how they use the raft and the styrofoams and everything and the nylon strings. So yes, I think it's a very interesting paper. And I feel if there's any opportunity that everybody in this East Asia region can have a workshop or some platform to exchange the knowledge of oyster farming or the use of styrofoam, that will be very good to understand. Because in Taiwan, we also use like the UAV or some other, like I think it's I forgot some technology to monitoring the number or the area of the oyster aquacultures. So I think we are facing very similar issue, and it will be very good if we can exchange our knowledge. Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Jason. And I think we have similar situation in Korea too. But the aquaculture system is different. It's similar to your country, Jason? Especially this figure.
Yes. But the material they use, it seems just wood, not bamboo. But in Taiwan, all the raft is made of bamboo.
Okay.
But yes, and the raft, the shape of the raft is square, so it won't be this rectangular shape, just square. But each square will be like I think it's maybe 8 or 6 square of raft will chain together and used to anchor the sea floor at the two ends. So it's also a long, like a long line or long shape of the whole raft. But each raft is square shaped. And they also, when oyster getting heavier, they will put more styrofoam under the raft, and they won't fix it. They just use the gravity of the raft to feed the styrofoam at that positions. So if there's some wave or winds, the styrofoam will leave the raft, become debris. And they also use this polyethylene mesh or bag to cover the styrofoam, because the new policy is not allow anyone to use the a styrofoam without any cover, but still some unregulated or illegal farmers still use the others retired styrofoam, which is very old and very weathery, so still an issue because they are regulated.
Thank you. And we were changing the aquaculture styrofoam buoy usage in this country recently. And if we have time, we'll show you the aquaculture area in Korea. We used a lot of styrofoam buoy, but we are changing to other
So
kind of buoy.
Yes,
Plastic buoy.
I know I think it's a orange one filled with styrofoam inside. So it's 100% alternative buoy right now, or still some
Still, we
someone
use styrofoam buoy, but from 2025, the styrofoam buoy usage is prohibited in this country.
Oh,
So maybe some, I think, pineapple. When I see aquaculture area in this Tongyong, less than 50, they are changing to new buoy. But in
yes.
other area, a lot of over than 50% they
Oh.
change it. And
Wow.
okay, I think we have time later because it's 10:57 after discussion time. I think we can show you the picture. Other questions or opinions about papers and other aquaculture practice?
Hi, this is Lincoln from Tangaroa Blue Foundation in Australia. I'm not too sure about the oyster aquaculture industry here, but definitely it's great to see a paper that is estimating the loss of plastic from the aquaculture industry. We are working with one company in Western Australia that is aquaculture for abalone, and they put the juveniles out using these baskets, and we were finding lots of them on the beach cleanups we were doing. We recorded them in the Australian Marine Debris Initiative database. And because we were recording so many of them, we were able to track them back to the company. And the company is now working with us to actually record how many they put out each year and how many they collect by themselves each year. So they have an estimate of the loss that they lose, like how much they're losing each year. So hopefully we can get an estimate from this one company on their loss of plastic, and again, start to ground truth some of the overall estimates of aquaculture, because I think it's quite a lot. Even just reading this paper, it seems like it's a huge amount. And as you said, as the aquaculture industry continues to grow, it's just going to get more and more.
Thank you, Lincoln. You don't have a oyster culture farm in your country?
I'm not sure. I don't know about it, but it's possible that we do, and I just don't know. I can look it up and see.
Thank you.
I have two questions. First of all, thank you, Alicia, for introducing this interesting paper. In this paper, they do not provide any basic data in the paper or in supplementary information material. So in the text, they mentioned the supplementary data and supplementary table, but I couldn't find the supplementary data. So can we think the level of providing raw data or basic information is enough for this kind of paper? I'm wondering. And second question is when I found out that the 49% of left or the materials discarded, but other 51% incinerated. What is incinerated? Is a proper disposal or illegal yard burning of the oyster facility? I was wondered. Do you have any clue or information on that?
I also couldn't find the supplementary material.
Mhm.
So,
It would be error.
And no detailed data, right?
yeah.
And how about incineration? Maybe not illegal, but unofficial disposal of aquaculture facility. Traditional way.
I suspect it will be traditional way because they said that because they just throw it in the sea. And so that is one of the options. And then the other one is they don't know what is the existing policy they have for this disposal and how to take care of end of life rafts. So it's possible that they just backyard burning.
If there is no other comment, I want to share our experience in estimating the debris generation amount from aquaculture in Korea. I think the framework was similar to this paper, but we used the remote sensing data from aerial image taken by airplane. Not it's a kind of Cessna or has it a small airplane, which is used for estimating the aquaculture production of Korea. So Korean government conduct aerial survey using airplane to estimate the total production of aquaculture product like lobster, oyster, or other things. So when we conducted the Korea government project, we can get that data from the a center established for conducting that kind of aquaculture production estimate to control the price of aquaculture product in Korea. So we were lucky enough to get that aerial survey data, and we can estimate the total area of aquaculture for each aquaculture product like oyster, lobster, and other things, and we can calculate the area and how many of the plastic materials used in that areas, and we can get the annual usage and annual disposal and loss of aquaculture materials, including plastics in aquaculture of Korea. So the framework is similar, but they use the satellite image, and I found that there are several trials or research to use satellite image to estimate aquaculture area in Korea. So in someday we can use that data to estimate the plastic debris generation from aquaculture in Korea.
Thank you, Alicia, for introducing this important and interesting paper. Have you found any loophole while you prepare this presentation? I mean, in estimation of the quantity of aquatic marine debris. Do you think this is very reasonable to estimate the amount of aquaculture related debris?
I think because this paper, they said that it's the first to estimate it. I think it's we can take it with a pinch of salt because so far I didn't see any others that also did similar. They didn't quantify how much plastic is generated. So I think it's.
As Zongyao said, we calculated. We tried many things to estimate plastic debris from aquaculture, and nationally and in province unit. And I thought, when I read this paper, I thought plastic waste from aquaculture in this China rather than more than Korea. I compared Gyeongnam province data, and they used less styrofoam buoy than not. I think because when see the deployment in the figure 1 or figure 2 in China is different from Korea, and less plastic buoy they used. Here they used bamboo, and less. We used a lot of thick suspending rope, not hanging rope. And I remember that this rope constitutes a lot of weight proportion because it's heavy. And but I think here in China, discarded plastic litter more than Korea, I thought. But we don't have detailed data, so we don't know where.
Hi, yes. I have a question. Because the author mentioned about maybe the next step maybe can promote the aspect of global aquaculture debris, marine litter from aquaculture globally. So my question is, do you think it's visible? Do we already have enough data to estimate the waste from maybe not global aquaculture, maybe just oyster or offshore aquaculture in this East Asia region? Because I think we pretty much share maybe similar technique or numbers, because those shellfish has a heavy shells, so we must provide them buoyancy, and those buoyancy are buoys. So if we have some like production number, by weight, maybe I'm not sure, is there maybe some person who know how to calculate this number? But I think if we have some like oyster production or some seaweed or some numbers, maybe we can calculate how much buoys we use every year. Maybe we can have a very rough number. It's very big, or it's just okay, or some idea of the classic buoys used in these regions. Okay, yeah, just a rough idea, because I think Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and China, we have already have papers that address our how we use different methodology to do in aquacultures.
Yes, for oyster culture. Please continue.
Yes. Oh, okay, thank you. So, Jingmin mentioned about use satellite to monitoring the number of the area, the aquaculture area. And my idea is, can we find can we use the production number to estimate the buoy or the waste generated by the industry, because maybe we can use the drone or satellite in all this area, but I think maybe the country's government provide the production numbers, right? I don't know if anyone use this number to estimate the marine debris amount. Okay, that's my idea. That's it.
Thank you. I think for oyster culture, lawfully it's possible to estimate plastic waste from oyster culture. Country use different cultural practice, but as you said, we have data from oyster culture. So, and oyster culture farming is farms are concentrated in Asian country, maybe. So, locally is possible, I think. But for different culture or shell farming, we should have other data by country. Thank you, Jason. And if no more questions and opinions arise, Alicia, could you share the Korean aquaculture farming? I asked Gugin to find some aquaculture picture.
Online aquaculture.
This thing, it is far different system from China, as shown in the figure in the paper. We use this system. On the surface, we use a thick rope, and we like a 100-meter long line, and we have a hanging line, like 7 meters. Usually, the average is around 7 meters, and the oysters are hanging on the line, hanging line. That is not a thick line. And we are changing the buoy. As Jason said, the orange buoy is new buoy, is certified buoy, like eco-friendly buoy. And some have a styrofoam buoy inside, but others empty. It's different. And we have orange one and white one and black one. Yes. But I thought the orange one most. This kind of oyster culture in Korea. And I think we use more buoy, styrofoam buoy than China when I see the figure in the paper. Thank you, Ellie. And I think we have enough discussion time. Wrap up the seminar and see you next week. And thank you again for participating in this seminar.